So let's talk about the Spotify model. What's that all about?
Oh wow, this is interesting and challenging. As you guys are growing, you're kind of bumping up against some of the stuff. Read an article by a friend of mine at Impact Branding and Design, Bree Rangel, who I was a client of theirs at one point, but they do really excellent content. And she was writing an article about how they've been growing, but hitting growing pains and struggling, and looking at different models of how to organize their team. And so it's really, the Spotify model is about different ways to organize your teams within your organization. So typically, is like you were talking about, like going from 40 to 50 or 30 to 50 in a short period of time, it puts pressures in different areas of the organization. You can hit bottlenecks. You can get overload on certain members of the team. It's slowing down the process. Maybe you're not as effective as generating as much revenue per employee as you were previously, and so you don't always need to necessarily throw more people at it. Sometimes you just need to consider a different structure of how you're doing it. And Spotify was doing agile marketing. They were doing Scrum. And probably using Jira. I don't remember if they said in this article that what they were using, but they were doing Scrum for their engineering team. And what the model talks about is that you have essentially teams that are comprised of cross-functional. So you could have in a team, you could have a salesperson, marketing person, operations, customer service, whatever. So you've got teams that are cross-functional. You can have multiple teams, and then they're part of a tribe. So you have this bigger tribe, and then you got these teams that are all cross-functional. And they're all able to solve end-to-end for the customer, right? So you're hitting every area of the organization. You got finance in there, I guess, as well, for example. And then in order to have it's not cross-functional, it's within the interfunctional, I guess.
Interfunctional, yeah.
That sounds odd, doesn't it? But so you could have chapters that go across that are all the marketing people.
Go across the tribe.
Yeah, they go across the tribe, right? So you got teams that are cross-functional, and then across each of the teams, you've got all the marketing people are in a chapter, right? And those chapters self-organize so that they can learn from each other across the different teams. And within the tribe. And then you have a guild, which can go cross tribes. You have multiple tribes. You can go cross tribe, cross team, and cross chapter. So they're all, and that can be self-organizing. You can come and go from guilds as you like. Sort of like it sounds like in the olden days of what a guild would be. And so it's just kind of an interesting. It's an interesting way to organize. But what Spotify does is that their leaders will say, here's the problem. And they'll give the problem to the teams and to the tribe and to the guilds. And they say, go solve the problem. They're not telling them what to do and how to go and do it and all that stuff. They're allowing them to organize, self-organize, and then solve the problems. And they even, within the organization, have areas where you have chapters and teams and tribes that are very intentional, the way that they're structured, with whiteboards all over the place and common areas, but then areas where they can all talk to each other, be working close to each other. So I just thought it was a different approach to.
It sounds very structured, but yet fluid.
Fluid, exactly.
The problem is that with big organizations, you try to structure everything, and you just essentially put up roadblocks to things. It becomes not. Here are the other people in the organization you should be working with. Like, it becomes more of, you're not allowed to do this until somebody else signs off on it or approves it. So it sounds much more fluid. I wonder I'd like to hear what the difference is. I'll have to read up on it, between what they're doing there and just sort of agile marketing, because they're really like different things. Agile marketing is really about iteration and quickly going.
They built on Agile. So they were doing Agile, but they were having, I don't remember the specifics of it, but they were running up against some of the limits of Agile, and probably because of the size of the organization too. But they are still doing that iterative approach, not the long drawn out types of software releases and that type of thing, but faster iterations. They found that by going to this model with the teams and the chapters and guilds, that they were able to get efficiencies and be faster and more effective with their software releases.
Interesting, because my first takeaway was applying it to like Impexium. I thought I can appreciate a lot of this cross-functional team where the executive team says, here's our problem, and I want you guys from your different seats within, probably different, interactions with the client or the product, solve it for me.
Yeah.
My fear would be, right, is I'm trying to think like what are the risks in this, is that like in any team environment, if there's a team of 5, you always have 2 people that are carrying the heavy load. And then as a growing organization, we would always be putting more work on the 2 or 3 people that are always taking the initiative. And the other person, maybe the extreme is, that's not my job because I'm too busy doing the day-to-day stuff or, checking all my boxes as this manager. And so it would, in its ideal, it works. In its practical execution, we've almost created more like burden on the people that are always taking the initiative anyway. And I thought in the article, like it didn't necessarily address what are the risks of setting it up like that. They kind of addressed what we were trying to address from our pain point, but what were some of the risks that going forward, will it continue to scale? That was kind of how I left it. I liked it. I thought this could work. We have a new training initiative, right? And we really need multiple departments to really look at it and even bring customers in, probably like as a seat, if you will, bring them into the guild, to get their perspective. But we can't always have the same 3 people driving those, problem solving exercises, because then we've just burdened, again, the top 20% of the company.
Did you get a sense?
I don't know if I agree with that so much, in the sense of like, if you get people that aren't very good, you gotta look at them and say, okay, you got one side, are they a good cultural fit? And over here you've got, so it's low to high, and then from low to high over here you got productivity, right? And so people that are low productivity, low culture fits are C players, you want to get rid of them, right?
Sure.
People that are high culture fits but low productivity, or somewhere they're more like a B players, you want to coach them up to become A players. A players are high productivity, high culture fit, right? And the worst ones are high productivity, low culture fit. At Aptify, we used to call them terrorists, and those are the people that you fire tomorrow, immediately. C players, you part with them as soon as you can.
And why is that? Because
the ones that are highly
they're
productive are very destructive to your culture.
Really productive.
They're the worst possible people that you have in your organization. And you have worked with terrorists before. I've worked with them, and when you think of it that way, that's so true. They're very disruptive to an organization. They're nasty to people, but they're able to stay because they can hit their quotas, and they're a salesperson.
They work really hard.
Yeah, and they work really hard.
We can't get rid of her. She's
she's really hard. Yeah. But those are the people you get rid of first. So if you're looking at people in those quadrants like that, and you're celebrating your A's, you're coaching your B's, you're getting rid of C's, and you're getting rid of the D's as soon as possible, then you don't have as much.
That's a good point.
Much of that problem.
I've never looked at it in that A, B, C, D, but maybe that's a good way to, if you will.
Well, I think that's something that goes underneath what Spotify is doing.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And it sounds like the same thing is true with Agile. If they're still doing sprints or scrumming around sprints and things like that, maybe it doesn't get mentioned. You could organize those things under this. Kind of interesting.
So after your second beer, will you mention the names of those terrorists and Aptify? We can go, oh, that guy.
I don't think they're there anymore. They're gone.
Yeah. Well,
Make sure we don't hire them.